Ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Faculty of Computing, I would like to welcome you all to the plenary session on computing of the 14th International Research Conference of General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University. I must mention that due to the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic situation in the country, this conference could not be held physically. Because of that, this conference will be conducted online. This plenary session is based on the theme of smart integration of technology to sustain and national development in the new normal, and will be chaired by Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda from the Department of Computational Mathematics, Faculty of Information Technology, University of Moratuwa. To enlighten us on this topic, we have a very eminent panel of speakers present here with us. Professor Yukun Bao, School of Management, Huazhong University of Science and Technology. Professor Tony Sahama, Adjunct Associate Professor, Health Information Science of University of Victoria. Dr. Shantha Fernando, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, University of Moratuwa. Mr. Diyath Ariyarathne, General Manager at Pearson Lanka Private Limited. Mr. Dileepa Jayatilaka, Director, Research and Special Projects at 99X. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Nirosha Vedasinghe to give you a brief introduction on Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda, the Chair of the Day.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to give you a brief introduction of Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda. Professor Asoka Karunananda is a senior professor at University of Moratuwa. In 1995, he received his PhD from University of Keele, United Kingdom. He has pioneered in introducing AI education and research in Sri Lanka. He was a founder member of Sri Lanka Association for Artificial Intelligence, SLAI, which was established in 1998. More than 30 years, he has rendered his service to the entire university system and national level contribution to National Science Foundation, National Institute of Education, Ministry of Education, and University Grant Commission in Sri Lanka. Professor Karunananda has contributed to launch several degree programs in the university systems, development of the department and staff, establishment of Faculty of Computing at Kotalawala Defence University. He has received many awards, including Best Science Communicator Award from Sri Lanka Association for Advancement of Science, Science Popularization Award from National Science Foundation, and CBCD Excellence Award from Committee of Vice Chancellor and Directors. He has secured more than 200 research publications in the national and international journals and conferences. He won President's Award for the publication in several times. He has also written many books for general public and schools, university students. He has produced more than 10 PhD MPhil graduates. His current research interests include artificial cognitive systems, multi-agent systems, mindfulness interventions, and theory of computing. It is with great pleasure that I invite Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda to chair this plenary session of the Faculty of Computing. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I think by considering the distribution of the eminent speakers in the plenary session, I must say that good afternoon to Sri Lanka and good evening for China, and I think good morning for Canada, no, if I am correct. So because this time is like that. It is a great pleasure for me to chair this plenary session for this 14th KDU International Research Conference First, I must congratulate Faculty of Computing at Kottayam Defense University by looking at the progress that they have made since I depart from KDU in 2016 actually. So with that little note, I'm going to introduce our plenary speakers, and I hope someone is looking after this timekeeping job for me. You have 25 minutes basically for the presentation. So then at the end of all the speeches, then we will have a small session for question and answering. Hope you are okay with that preliminaries. Then let me introduce first speaker today, Professor Yukun Bao. I got to know actually he's the professor who's with the supervisor of Dr. Azil Gunasekara in FOC. Actually, Professor Bao is from School of Management, Huazhong University of Science and Technology in China. Dr. Yukun Bao is currently a professor at the School of Management, Huazhong University of Science and Technology in China, and Deputy Director of Center for Modern Information Management, Huazhong University of Science and Technology. His research interests are computational intelligence and its application in business, finance, and engineering, evolutionary computation and optimization, business intelligence, data mining, and information system management. He has published more than 70 papers in national and international journals, conference, and some of them appeared in IEEE transaction on cybernetics, then information science, energy, applied computing, energy economics, neurocomputing, energy application of artificial intelligence, knowledge-based system, telemedicine, and e-health, information development, Journal of Educational Computing Research, Asia Pacific Education Research, and so forth. It's a long list, but without doing any injustice to the professor, I wanted to read it. He has been the principal investigator for 3 projects funded by National Science Foundation of China and received the Excellent Faculty Award from IBM in 2012. He's a counselor of the Chinese Association of Computer Simulation, senior member of IEEE, and professional activity chair of IEEE Wuhan section. He has served as associate editor of Neurocomputing Elsevier, Journal of Systems and Information Technology, Emerald Program, committee member for several international conferences and regular reviewer for journals such as IEEE Transaction on Neural Networks and Learning Systems, Applied of Computing, Knowledge Base, European Journal of Operational Research, Tourism Management, Electronics, Commerce Research and Application, Computers in Human Behavior, and so on. I really would like to welcome this eminent professor for his plenary speech. Over to you, sir.
Okay, yeah. Just as I connected with the coordinator, I'd like to play my presentation video. Yeah. So please just play my presentation video.
Good afternoon, respect session chair and all the conference participants. I'm Professor Yukun Bao, from Huazhong University of Science and Technology. I'm glad to take the chance to present one of our recently finished projects titled as Multi-Stem Hand Influenza Prediction using machine learning models, evidence from China. This study was conducted by Ms. Si Yueyang, one of my PhD students, and me, and other team members. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to first introduce the background, the research gaps identified, and the motivation behind this study. Second, I'm going to come up with some details, the key things of the methodologies used in this study. I won't come up with too much details because actually this study has already submitted to the Journal of Applied Soft Computing and was recently accepted. Later on, I will share the links to our papers as well as the link to the codes and the data used in this study. Third, I'm going to come up with some key things, key issues we faced in the experimental design. And finally, I will come up with some results and the conclusions. Okay, the backgrounds. As you know that influenza, known as flu, is a contagious respiratory illness caused by influenza virus, which causes a lot of troubles. According to reports, there are 3 to 5 million severe illness cases caused by influenza every year, and 500,000 deaths. It is very important to make influenza prediction, particularly for the public health decision makers. Based on the prediction, we can do something such as medical resources allocation and the planning of vaccination campaigns each year. The data used in this study is influenza-like illness rates. And actually, this is commonly used in the previous studies, which is a major indicator of influenza activities. That's it to say, we use it as data to predict the potential or the coming influenza, outbreak of influenza each year. And ILI is defined as a fever with a temperature more than 33°C centigrade, with a symptom of cough and sore throat, but we don't know the causes other than influenza. We got the data from Chinese National Influenza Center, and this is the website of the center. This data is based on the weekly, it's weekly data. This is a snapshot of ILI rates from southern and northern China in the last 10 years, our time window of 10 years. We observe a very strong pattern, just like a seasonal pattern, with some irregular, changes in some specific time. And according to the literature review, we get concluded that there are 2 subcategories of prediction model. One is mechanistic models, which mainly come up with by the community of public health. Another is statistical models and machine learning models. And actually, our study focused on machine learning models using some well-established machine learning modeler, such as support vector machines and neural networks. Another part of the methodological parts is the prediction horizon. The previous study dominantly focused on one step ahead, but there is a trend from one step ahead prediction of influenza to multi-step ahead case, which means that we have to make influenza prediction on a longer time horizon, which can facilitate decision makings. And there are several research gaps we can find. First of all is that according to our initial review, specific attention on different multi-step ahead modeling strategies was rarely paid in previous study. And there are three commonly used major modeling strategies. One is iterative strategy, second, direct one, third, multiple inputs, multiple outputs strategy. If you have some experience of machine learning modeling, you know that different modeling strategies can significantly influence multi-step prediction performance while using the same modeler. Yeah, actually, this is a common sense in machine learning community, but was ignored in the previous study about the prediction of influenza. The second gap identified is the measurements of prediction performance during outbreak periods for multi-step ahead models was rarely, checked or examined or investigated in the previous study. Most of the existing multi-step ahead influenza prediction just use statistical metrics to evaluate performance, but in practice, accurate prediction of outbreak periods, including the timing and severity of influenza outbreak peaks, is highly concerned and quite important for decision making. So the contributions of our study relies on, first, we conduct a very extensive comparison of different multi-step ahead modeling strategies with two well-established modelers. Second, we conduct more comprehensive performance evaluations considering the outbreak time and magnitude accuracy. Third, we introduce a unified adaptive model tuning framework, which can facilitate the prediction performance of the model. Then we come to the second section about methodology. First, let's look at multi-step ahead modeling strategies. This are the formulas of different strategies. You can find the difference between these three strategies. Let's focus on the first one first. That is iterative strategy. Iterative strategy means that we use available data at time t and set up a one-step ahead prediction model only. By such kind of one-step ahead prediction model, we can achieve each step ahead prediction in an quantitative way. This means that, let's take h equal to 2 as an example. If we want to predict t plus 2 prediction, we first use this model to predict t plus 1. And then we use a predicted t plus 1 as a known value and input it or feed in this model again, and then we achieve the prediction of t plus 2. Okay, for direct strategy, I think is simple and easy to understand. As you see, we just set up a model in a straightforward way. Let's say we associate the available data and the targets t plus h, yeah, and then find the relationship. The third one is a little bit different from the first one, and the different part is output parts. Let's just say we use several inputs and get the several outputs, which covers the time horizon from t plus 1 to t plus h. This means that the function or modeler here must be capable of modeling such kind of multi-inputs, multi-outputs structure. Then we come to the modelers we use in this study. Two well-established modeler we use in this study. One is support vector regression. The second is MLP, very commonly used real work model. I don't want to come up with more details about this two modeler, so we come to the third part of the methodology. This is the modeling framework. We introduce the comprehensive learning PSO machine learning modeling framework. The reason why we introduce comprehensive learning PSO is motivated by the call for the optimization task while setting up the models. One is parameters optimization. The second is feature selection. This is to say, by introducing a binary CL-PSO algorithm, we set up a unified framework to tune parameters and feature selections at the same time. The key parts of this CL-PSO mechanism is the representation of each puzzle. We use the binary representation to represent feature and parameters. Here is the example. 0 means we don't select that feature. 1 means we select it. By such kind of representation, we can conduct a feature selection. And here we use binary value to represent the real value. Take SVR as the example. The parameters we are going to tune include 3. One is C, second epsilon, third gamma. And this is to say, with a unified binary schema to represent features selection and parameters in a unified way. And that is easy to make the PSO to work. Here is the formula of updating of velocity. If we have some experience, you might know that what does this mean by velocity. I don't want to come up to more details to save time. Here is the updating formula of position. Yeah, PSOC. And then we come to the third subsection about the experimental design. We take data from Chinese National Influenza Center to get 2 RLI race series from Southern China and Northern China. We check 3 multi-stem hand strategies, just Now I mentioned that. And we check two machine learning modules. One is SVR, second is MLP. We investigate or examine the performance from 2 stem hands to 10 stem hands. We use 4 evaluation metrics. This is the flow chart of the experiments. This is a formula of 2 statistical metrics, MAPE, RMSE. This is snapshots of influenza outbreak metrics that you see we calculate some specific metrics during the outbreak time. Here is a formula of these 2 influenza outbreak metrics, PWE and MAE. This is a parameter space for optimization in SVR and MLP. For SVR, we got 3. This is space, definition of space. For MLP, actually, we just focus on the size of hidden layers. This means the number of the neurons in each hidden layer. Yeah. Then we come to the results and the conclusions. Here is the accuracy. The results of accuracy. Weekly ILI rates in Northern China. For this column is matrix, 4 matrix. The second column is difference model. SVR modeler and the different strategies. MLP modeler and the different strategies. And this is the performance of each time horizon from 2 to 10. Yeah. And then we can get some conclusions. This is figures of the performance and of each model and difference in those strategies. We can get some conclusion by check the performance metrics. 1, MIMO strategies derive the least errors. The iterated strategy is also competitive and ranked first and the PWE outbreak metrics. And the time horizon of 4 seems a turning point. Well, the iterated strategy has an edge for shortness of horizon, say 2 and 3, while the MIMO strategy is potentially more adaptive for longer time horizon. Yeah. This is the figures of the performance of the prediction against the real. Yeah. Let me find the great. Looks right. Yeah. And then we come to the performance on weekly RLI rates in southern China. Okay. And we can get some conclusions by have a close look at the results. First, the MIMO strategies keeps the most competitive strategy, just as the findings we get from the IRAs in northern China. The horizon of 4 also acts as a turning point for the ranking of 3 strategies in most cases of RMSE, PWE, and outbreak MAE. This is a snapshot of the performance of prediction against the real. So, in this, after the extensive experiments, and we can get some conclusive remarks. First, the MIMO strategy achieves the best multi-step hand prediction and is potentially more adaptive for longer time horizon. And actually, I guess the reasons behind is because they use a mark inputs in and a mark output structure, which can keep the dependency among different time points. Let's just say we mark in and we mark out. So the dependency among the inputs can be identified by the modeler. Second, the iterative strategy has special potential for deriving the least time difference between the occurrence of the predicted peak value and the true peak values of the influenza outbreak. This means that the iterative strategy might be a good choice if we want to check the performance of during the outbreak period. Yeah. Okay, this is the end of my presentations. Just as I mentioned in the beginning, this work was already accepted for publication in Applied Soft Computing elsewhere journal, rank good in artificial intelligence community. And later on, I will share the links to this paper. And we also submit the code and the data to the websites, to the journal. And we will also share the links to you. And then you can use the code and the data to replicate the study. This means that you can know every details of this model, of this work. Okay, thanks for listening, and I hope can receive emails and inquiries from you. I also look forward to the potential research collaboration between my team and you, or maybe your team. Thanks very much. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Yukun. Excellent timing, actually. Then we'll get back to you in the question and answering session after all the presentation. So we will move into the next keynote speaker. Sorry, our plenary speaker, Professor Tony Sahama. Actually, Professor Tony, I made a mistake actually at the beginning when I welcome you all. I thought you are from Canada, and I got to know that you are from Australia. So for you also, this is evening there. Thank you. And Professor Tony is an open-minded transdisciplinary researcher. His research engagement on information accountability, health, information privacy and security, cybersecurity and healthcare information technology, such as digital health, health informatics, medical informatics, e-health and health information system design, development and deployment. Tony possesses a PhD in computer science, computer simulation and modeling, and has experience working with researchers in developing customized technology application for clinical decision support systems, data warehousing, data integration, and IT application for healthcare decision-making process. Tony's recent work involves solving the black box theory of protecting health information using information accountability protocols and associated research challenges in the blockchain approach. Tony is a passionate higher degree research supervisor and mentor who currently supervises 6 PhD research projects in the medical informatics, health informatics, e-health, and health information technology research area. Tony holds a professional membership with ACM, IEEE, IBS, ACS, SARS Inc., and HISA. Tony is an active external reviewer, peer reviewer, and associate editor for several medical health informatics research journal publications. He is committed to sharing knowledge and experience that he had acquired with people and the society. Professor is a team player, passionate academic, dedicated member and research supervisor, engaging in transdisciplinary research activities to facilitate collaborative, practice-based inquiry of learning and research endeavors. Professor Tony, it's over to you now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me share the screen. Yeah, thanks for the correction. It is not confusing, that is okay. I'm sure you can hear me very well because I can see from my network meter, it is very high packet transmission happening between Colombo and Brisbane. Right now, I'm located in Brisbane, but I do have several collaboration every part of the world. I do have my colleague also in this call. By the way, I'm Sri Lankan born, but at this stage it is Australian grown. So I still have a spirit of living in Sri Lanka and do have some collaboration down in ADU as well, Sir John Kutarala Defense University. Other than boasting about me, those who are interested, you can go and have a look who I am, what I'm doing. Already Chair, Professor Karunananda said who I am. Well, I'm always passion sharing information and data for better life. Part of that, you will be able to see my topic. It is a full-on techno-socio-psycho challenges of national development in the new normal. The national development here is basically local in Sri Lankan context. Let's see how we can unpack this complex scenario. Those who are having any thoughts or questions as we have a time at the end, hold on to your question, we can discuss that. I managed to annotate my slides to keep you engaged. Let's start with our scenario. New normal. New normal means it's not normal. That's why it's new normal. But this is not the time for me or my colleague to define new term for new normal. Rather, we want to give you our sharing of data, what has happened for this new normal. By the time we are looking for alternatives, because of some trust, uncertainty, based on inaccurate information or data, which is misinformed, driven by policy, which is creating confusion. At the end, it is leading to new classification. Is it different classes? We do not know. So at this stage, I'll leave it there with new normal. We will be able to find a new term for it. Let's move on to what is the problem we are facing right now. What is this techno-socio-psycho challenges we are facing right now? I hope you can see my screen because I can see screen is moving. Well, what is the scenario? The scenario is, as you can see, we all are familiar with this graph. Very popular, pop up with here and there, everywhere, newspapers, journal articles, everybody onto it. The critical problem is we do have an issue where we have a pandemic. Number of cases are growing, do not know why and how, but there's a problem. This is the problem space. We don't want to stay there. We want to move into the comfortable zone. Not necessarily going to be comfortable, some way a solution, maybe the solution. How do we do that? Well, we want to press this peak, put your thumb and press it, then we want to achieve this hump. This is exactly what is happening around the world. No countries, either developed or developing or underdeveloped, whichever the label you want to put it, can't cope with this pandemic scenario. So whether it is an economist, public health expert, technologists, or scientists in every corners can come up with any scenario, still it is not something we can achieve. How do we move from point A to point B? What is the best way we do this? What will be the strategies? How can we achieve this? Well, that is where the socio-psycho-technical problem we are going to discuss based on the data we have collected, shared, published, and also with some empirical outcome. At this point, I would like to make very clear, I am not clinician, I am not psychologist, I'm not sociologist. I'm information technologist with multidisciplinary research in transdisciplinary context. Let's move on. So hope the screen is moving. Let's see what is these different classes. The different classes we are talking here is we are deriving from this scenario. Because of use of more data, don't ask me how the data is coming, information. And also trying to do everything remotely, trying to do everything electronically. We call tele everything. We use high-tech innovation, technology, and try to augment them. Well, it may all come up with different business models at the end. There are ad hoc policies emerging. We give up our privacy and also new legislation. Of course, there will be a new legislation down the corner. Is it these different classes we are talking here? Well, let's see how we can unpack this again using 3 of the case studies we are dealing with, particularly with education, health, and technology itself for the national context. If we see this model, there are so many factors. For the simplicity, we use only the factors that are highly correlated with the scenario. The technological factors, keep in mind, there are 18 to 20 factors for each of these disciplines, each of these scenarios. Technologically, the cost, training, complexity, resources, acceptability. Moving from anti-clockwise, sociologically or socio context, health, education, occupation, income, and the power. You can label the power whichever the way you like, including political power. Moving on to the right, psychologically or psycho, involvement, influence, recognition, reward, and growth. If we compare these factors with 3 of the case studies we have, education, health, and technology itself, we would be able to see what are these factors directly correlating for this new normal or national development, where it can be used against anything you define, whether it's a sustainable development, growth, and or further development. Well, is this new normal we are talking? Is there different classes here? Let's move on. Education, first case study. Technologically, the demanding or a factor which is correlated, the cost and training. Moving clockwise, sociologically or social factors, education and occupation. Psychologically, it is involvement and recognition. Let's move on to the next case study. Health. Technologically, complexity, acceptability is very prominent. Sociologically, occupation and income is also contributing factor. Psychologically, involvement and influence. Just compare education and health. Technologically, acceptability is most demanding. Well, you can see that at the end of the talk, where we are at for last 80 years, where we are heading by next 5 years. Sociologically, education is next prominent factor when we talk about the technology. Psychologically, the growth. So let's start moving to education, just to refresh you. Health, technology. Is it this what we are talking about new normal? Or the different classes we are defining? How do we move on to understanding these factors? If you be able to see my screen from left to right, we have come long way. 80 years, we do have some maturity. Technologically, we have grown almost 80 years with further development. The data we collected from 1940 to 2000 is pretty much what is already published. This was published 10 years ago. Between 2000 to 2020, there was a data we collected. 2000 to 2005, that is your challenge. You need to do that for yourself. Maybe a good PhD study. As you can see from this growth, artificial intelligence and the internet is what we predicted is already happened, not only 2021, it happened last year. What will happen by next 3 or 4 years, which we call so-called new normal, we will see artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, deep learning, machine learning, natural language processing, NLP. These are become fingertip tools which we will not spend that much of time spending behind the scene program. These have become your tools. Sometimes this becomes your fingertips, press the button, get the job done in your white goods, something happening already in part of the Europe. So what is this message is giving us? Can we tackle our new normal? What is the problem we are facing with our pandemic? Does this resolvable? Well, think about yourself. If you are locked in the house for 1 week, what you can achieve? Do you really want to be locked into your house? So let's move on. This is the data we collected, part of our team study, published in 2019. But I'm sure now it is changed. What this graph is telling you, there are around 30 countries, all of them are OECD countries. They do have a technological readiness, TOR. They have a data governance readiness, DGR. This bar represent the first component is TOR, the second component is DGR. This indicates the countries are ready to tackle the challenges, whether it is what we define new normal or anything to do with endemic or some natural disaster. This is a technological viewpoint, capability, and also technologically manageable economy. As you can see from this graph, there are significant 4 countries are sitting on the top. In this axis, this is the ranking, or whatever the unit you can call it, basically it is a ranking. This axis is the location. Well, you will be able to see Estonia, Finland is in the top, second best is Singapore, Slovakia. What is the significance of those countries? And also you can see Austria not far away. Well, the significance of those countries are less than 5 million people as a population, as we speak, which means manageable resources, manageable, acceptable policies, and the power. Doesn't mean other countries can't do it. If you compare Australia sitting in just 4.5 compared to Sweden, well, Sweden also have 7 million people. I'll see what happened to USA. So these are the readiness of the challenges. Those who are interested, you'll be able to download this data from OECD. And I'm sure that OECD got updated data for last 5 years. What does this telling us as far as our new normal and national growth is concerned? We have opportunity. We should take this opportunity. How do we travel from point A to point B, as I explained in our third slide? Not necessarily the pandemic. Any disaster, whether it's going to be a pandemic, natural disaster, technology is a solution. Most likely some people become using the solution. Well, if you see this global snapshot, this is published in 2017. This is publicly available data. You can download. Of course, you should acknowledge where the data is coming from. Is this reliable? We are not 7.5 billion people. We have grown. Number of people using internet also grow. As you move on, you should be able to see what is happening with these active mobile users and mobile users. What does it telling you can we achieve that challenge? What does it telling you where we are at? If you compare 2021 data and the growth from 2020 January up to 2021 January, 1% growth of the population. So you should be able to work it out. What is our population then? All right. Similarly, what has happened to the internet users? 7.3% growth for 1 year. So most likely we should have now close to 5 billion people using the internet or more. However, don't underestimate, there are still people do not have 3G facilities in the world. There are places where in the world people are still using 3G and also no much use of the smartphone. So don't underestimate, there are problems that some part of the world. Compared to active social media users and also unique mobile users, you would be able to easily predict the number of population growth compared to what has happened from this data and from this growth. Having said that, what we are learning here is if the technology is going to be a design or failure, we should be able to use as a design guideline. What does it mean? We should be able to use the technology for successful development. As I label myself, I'm not sociologist or psychologist, but I use data and information system heavily with multidisciplinary research space. Nationally, our challenges are our involvement. Our challenges are the influence and the recognition. If you superimpose these factors back to our case studies, education, health, and technology, these are the challenges we are facing locally. We should be able to see our new normal if we should be able to manage these three critical factors. Of course, we do have a cultural balance. If you see different countries have a different cultural norms, different way of doing things. At the end, this curve is similar to everybody. Nobody can escape from that. Therefore, it is important to understand how do we achieve this, where do we go from here, how do we contribute to a national sustainable development with this new normal. I'm not here to advocate you do everything electronically. I'm not doing anything electronically 100%. Still, there is a risk. There are uncertainties. There are acceptabilities, particularly if you go to the health sector. Health sector have an issue with technology where the complexity and acceptability. Just to give you an example. How are we going to overcome that? Therefore, it is important to understand these three case scenarios: education, health, and technology, to consider as enable factors for achieving this goal for this new normal. From that point, I am happy to stop, and thanks for the organizers and the chairs, especially local organizers. I hope that the technology has done a good job for us. during the sum up Q&A, I am happy to be available to answer your question. Thank you very much. Pradeep?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Tony, for your inspiring talk, because we are basically technical people, but sometimes we forget about the social side in other parts of the problem. So then anyway, I think audience will ask question from you during the Q&A time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we move on to the next plenary speaker, Dr. Shantha Fernando. Coincidentally, actually, they are my colleagues. Dr. Shantha Fernando is a senior lecturer at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka. He served as Director, Center for IT Services, University of Moratuwa, and the Director Engineering Research Unit, University of Moratuwa again. He is one of the founders of Director of this tech cert, which is providing the technical support for everything at University of Moratuwa, and affiliated to the LK domain registry. And he obtained his BSc Engineering Honours degree from University of Moratuwa in 1993. Obtained his Masters of Philosophy from the same university 2000. And after that, actually, his PhD was obtained from Delft University of Technology, Netherlands in 2010. He also obtained Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership from Lanka Bible College, Center for Graduate Studies and Development, Associates International in 2016. He became the first chartered engineer in Sri Lanka in the field of information technology in the Institute of Engineers, Sri Lanka. He also served in the Council of Computer Society of Sri Lanka. His expertise are computer and information security, information systems, e-learning and e-learning. He has provided advisory service for many government and commercial organizations in the area of his expertise since 1994. Now, Dr. Shantha Fernando, it is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Asoka Karunananda. And I also get a lot of inspiration from him. I hope that I am audible and my screen is visible. If I can get a feedback.
Yes, actually.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. So I was told that the theme of this particular session is digital resilience and innovation in the new normal. And then when I was asked to select a topic, what I thought was, rather than going into some theoretical discussions, I selected the topic of making university education smart in the new normal. Knowing that this is a research conference, I wanted to bring in some theoretical aspects and the research aspect, but what I thought was, considering the situation, to focus more on the practical side and then give some insights from the experiences that I have, not only myself, together with our colleagues, mostly in our university. And then I hope that it will be good for KDU as well, because I have been sharing this with many of the colleagues at KDU since I also teach some of the batches, right? So making university education smart in the new normal. If I just present to what I hope to discuss today, I would like to briefly look at how things have evolved in the university education, not looking at all the sites, but some of things that are relevant for my topic, some of the research findings, specifically some of the research that I got involved. And then how in the past, probably over the period of maybe 18-19 years, how the things were improved or the preparatory work was done, and then how we have come to the state today, and some of the challenges that we faced, and then how we overcame, and then how we could face the current situation, what is called the new normal, and then some conclusive remarks. In fact, I am happy that the session by Professor Tony, the previous session, set a good platform for me, and several definitions and the way that we should look at was discussed, and some of the aspects will have some kind of an overlapping, but looking at from a different angle, of course, but we will see a kind of a parallelism and a similarity as well, right? So if you look at university education and trends and some of the research findings, now if you look at this, now my topic is on smart university education. And if we talk about this smart university education, I don't think that we can get rid of the topic of e-learning. Now people may use different terms, use of learning management systems or learning and content management systems, etc. Those are the system side, but the learning side separately looked at, and then there are a lot of ambiguities that may be there. So I thought, just to give some kind of a definition for e-learning. So what does it actually mean? Because the reason that I want to talk about e-learning is that today, during this pandemic situation, even the educational institutions that did not consider e-learning as a means of education earlier, now they have been sort of forced into that. Sometimes, whether they like it or not, they had to select it, because otherwise there was no survival for them. But I would like to bring a kind of a definition, the definition that I would use. In fact, different people may use different definitions. It is up to you to either agree or disagree with me. That's okay, perfectly okay. I would define it as something referring to electronically facilitated, enhanced, and managed learning. Now, just because something is there in the internet, some learning contents are there in YouTube, or a lot of Wikipedia articles are there. Just because all the resources are available in the internet, we don't call it e-learning. But when it is, of course, facilitated through electronic means, through systems and communications and tools and various other things, if it contributes to the enhancement of the learning experience, and not just the learning experience, if it provides a management platform, the learners are not just left for their own courses of actions, but they are guided through, and their activities are managed, their performance is evaluated, the tasks done by the teachers or the lecturers or the tutors or the facilitators, those are managed. All the resources are managed. So this management activity, the aspect is very important when it comes to e-learning, right? So it is something very much beyond mere hosting of application services. So I do not generally consider just because you have a learning management system that you really have e-learning. You can simply have a learning management system, and you can have a lot of content there as well. You can put a lot of links to various other, we know that today we have a lot of what is called the MOOCs, massively open online courses, and there are a lot of universities who are offering them. Of course, if we enroll to a course and if we follow, then of course, yes, it is a managed learning. So there will be somebody who is managing that, and then we will be guided through a particular process. So learning is also a process. So it goes just very much beyond the mere hosting of the application services. And in fact, I would like to say there are three uses that matter that we can consider. One is the usefulness, the other is the usage, and the usability. That is one aspect. Then the other aspect is that the learner engagement. So the learner engagement matters a lot. So in fact, this is one of the challenges that we face today during this pandemic. So how to get the learners engaged. In fact, more than the university level and the postgraduate level, we know that as parents, how much trouble that the parents have to take to keep the students, specifically the primary and secondary school level students, engage with the activities, because it's very difficult for them to stay in one place. Engagement has become a kind of issue. But it is true up to some level, even from the undergraduate and postgraduate learners as well. Now, one aspect that we have to look at from a theoretical point of view that I have considered even in my PhD time was that the designing useful content, and then whether it will be really suitable for our new normal. Now, if you look at this usefulness of learning content, e-learning content, or whatever the content that we use for our learning process, that will depend on several other factors. Now, we can't disregard them, right? For example, if you have a particular academic program, it is offered within a particular course. So we have to take that context into consideration. Then it is in a particular field or discipline within which the academic program is run. And then in many universities today, we have, specifically when it comes to the technology-based or technical education, there's a particular target industry. Maybe it may not be a kind of a niche area, but some form of a target industry is considered. And also it is very important that we can't keep on producing new content always. The reusability. Sometimes certain contents may become obsolete, some new content may be developed, but then we have to see whenever we put some effort into that, whether it can be reused. And then the feasibility of the operation or the delivery of the courses in the target learner environment. Now, that is quite important today, specifically in today's context, because depending on the target learner environment. Now, the early days in our full-time concept of university education, the learners came into the university. So then most of the facilities were available in the university. So there was a particular environment. Now what has happened is the target learner environment has become different. It is not the same environment today. So then how can we take this learning process forward successfully, considering that new normal environment that the learners are having? Then of course we can't forget about the people who involved with this learning process. There are a lot of actors. Generally, that's the place where we talk about a learning management system where the actors come together. So the effective use of e-learning depends on how well a particular platform or a learning management system is used by these actors. The actors can be the learners, academics, content developers, and various other stakeholders. Even the industry participants can be there, local as well as foreign experts. And then the students also can be, learners also can be both local and foreign. And whenever we deliver a particular course, which is generally referred to as engaging in a learning experience, synergy matters. How we do it together. It is not only the subject matter experts, even the students. Today, of course, in the era of internet, even the students bring in a lot of expertise. Sometimes in certain areas, they may outperform the lecturer even, and that is to be expected. So it is a two-way education process. While I am teaching a particular subject, I also will learn a lot of things from the students in today's context. So this synergy, doing things together, that matters. Right? So I generally refer this as the usage aspect of the e-learning content and the systems, and that has to operate in the new normal. Then of course we come to the usability aspect, the appropriate use of technology. Because this e-learning content depends on various things. One is the supportive IT infrastructure in the learning environment. So it may be the university, it can be the working place, it can be the residence, because some people are accessing some of the learning content or they are conducting the courses from their working places. Some are industry experts. And then the learners, the students are sometimes in their residencies. Or else in some cases, some people have got even COVID and they were in the hospital and they were still engaging in the learning process. Now, this is something that was not there before. Of course, if they were in a serious situation, they may not do that. But I know personally, several students who were, while in the hospital, how they got engaged with the learning process. And then we also have to consider the systems we have, the facilities, the functions, tools. So a lot of things that are provided in a learning system environment. Now, the question that we have is whether these are appropriate to cater for the new normal. Now, early days, before this pandemic came in, there was a particular environment that we operated. But now, of course, we have to consider a lot of other factors, the bandwidth requirements, the charges, the policies that a government may have regarding the data volumes and the charges by the ISPs. The income levels, we know that some people have faced the issue of the income level going down. So all these factors need to be taken into account, but yet we have to take the learning process forward. Now, what should we focus on because of this? Now, some of the research that we did identified that interactivity is very important and the learner contribution is very important. So this is something that will keep them engaged and the process will go forward. Right? So the interactivity may be defined as the activities carried out between multiple parties with each other. So when it comes to the learning process, the interactions can be between the learners, the learner, and between the content or the system and the learner, and then between the tutors and the learners. Now, the most important but neglected part has been the interaction between human role players, that is the learner and the learner tutor. So why this is important is because this is where the different ideas, different arguments, so all those are generated in this human interaction situation. So because of that, it is quite important. Now, I got involved with a project called Distance Education Partnership Program, which was under the Distance Education Modernization Project under the Ministry of Higher Education some time back. I think Professor Asoka, Karunananda also knows about it. We were working together. In one of the research we got involved, our objective was to find the highest contributor for the learner satisfaction. So that was the dependent variable that we looked at. So based on the qualitative and quantitative analysis, we looked at independent variables, the community building, interaction, learner support, course design, etc. And we carried out the research using some online instructors who are undergoing training and some educational and tutor mentor specialists who conducted the courses. The highest contributor for the learner satisfaction was the interaction. So this is what we found. If I show it using a graph, the interaction contributed to about over 50%, and then the other factors like community building, learner support, course design, all of them had lower percentages. Of course, there was various other factors. You can see that this does not add up to 100%. So the learner satisfaction depended heavily on the interaction. So what is the implication for the new normal? So if we want the learners to learn, they need to engage in the course. So if we are to keep the learner engagement, interactivity is important. The challenge is to facilitate the interaction while the learners are keeping social distance. So to make the education smart, we need to be smart enough to maintain the interaction in the context of new normal. So our challenge is, how can we facilitate this? What kind of tools can we use? How can we ensure that the interaction will go forward in the way that is expected or that is desirable, right? So this is something that we need to keep in mind, right? So then we will come to the preparation and gradual improvement. Some of the experiences we have from the past, right? In fact, I need to apologize. There were a lot of disturbances in the earlier session. So some seller had come and his noise was too much, right? Apologies for that. And then, so if you look at this, the preparation and the gradual improvement, why I want to focus on this gradual improvement aspect is, now today we can see that the effort is to do things as fast as possible, because all of a sudden this pandemic came and then institutions were clueless. But then of course many people face a lot of problems as well. I'm not sure whether I have a direct answer to say whether whenever a particular institution needs to get into this, whether they have any other choice than getting into some rapid course of actions. But of course, for our own advantage, we have been doing this for a quite long time. So therefore, we could have some gradual preparation and an advancement than having a lot of ad hoc initiatives. So we started some way back in 2003, right? So now it is almost 18 years. So then what we observed was the steady and continuous knowledge construction could be achieved when we had the learner participation improved. And also we have seen that there's a lower dropout rate. Now I am not talking about the fully virtual or traditional learning. So this is kind of a blended learning activity that we started. Then we figured out that there was a kind of a satisfaction and a motivation that we could observe among the students. And also there was a kind of a quite higher volume of knowledge sharing, because it is not only the lecturer who was engaged in the learning process, it was also the participants. In fact, we tested this mostly with the PG courses. I have to admit that some of the courses for the undergraduates at the quite early stages in the first year, the first semester, or second semester, didn't have that much of a success. But as it went along the academic years, there was quite a good improvement. And when they came to the third and the fourth years or semesters, 6, 7, 8, etc., we could see the advantages. So in this case, when we look at the knowledge sharing, we were able to manage multiple resource persons and better planning. And then there were so many subject matter experts that could be brought in. So we didn't have to depend purely on our own university. We could have a lot of collaborations with many other universities. And then even to face unavoidable circumstances like such as the COVID situation. So it was quite equivalent to having lecturers who do not fall sick. Right now, as human beings, we fall sick. But of course, here there's a kind of opportunity for us to have a situation where the learning activities go uninterrupted continuously. So this was one advantage. Of course, in some areas there might be a situation that we are unable to find that many expertise, but still we could use a lot of other collaborations with many other universities and then MOOCs and various other things to fill the gaps. So that was a quite good opportunity for us. So because of that, instead now in fact what I am talking about here is not the fully virtual learning, but to have a lot of interactions and then use the system to facilitate that. The humanness also need to come in. So therefore, building learning communities with enhanced relationships, that was quite important. Now today we talk about the social distancing, right? Now, while the social distancing is happening, whether we have ways of bringing closeness, right? Now that is something that we could facilitate through many of these learning management systems and get them to engage in activities and then work on the subject matter in a different way than becoming just the mere listeners, right? Now, if you consider how we remember some of the things that we learned during our university time, now that is because of a lot of activities we had, the engagements, the things we did, rather than listening to a lecture, right? So I'm not going to talk about this Bloom's taxonomy and all that, but then we know that when we apply the things together, that's why the projects are also quite important, right? So because of this, the new normal calls us for a new way of building relationships in the learning process. And also it's very important due to the time restrictions, I will skip this particular slide, but one thing that I want to highlight is that the institution need to get involved in this. Now we can't have just individuals trying the things. Now we have to bring this together in a formalized manner, right? Sometimes we may not be able to wait for the perfect solution, but however we will have to work on certain things and then we have to build our own thing as well, because each university works in a different way. And therefore, there need to be certain things that can be developed within the university itself so that their processes can be facilitated. They may not be kind of huge systems. You can do a lot of integration. So if we look at how we did from the past experiences, it's mostly the integration and automation, right? So those were the main technical tasks. In fact, when COVID came, we were COVID ready. So we were ready for it even well before the pandemic. Of course, we didn't know that it was coming. So why was that? We already had some centralized authentication systems implemented. Now, these are not the learning things, but that facilitated. And integration of applications through the single sign-on, all our learning administrative portals, Moodle-like learning management systems, document management systems, Wi-Fi facilities, email, web, and there were so many other things. And also we had built as a team, of course there was a team of people who worked together, various the online live session platforms like not only Zoom, there was something called Big Blue Button, and then there was various other platforms. We had a situation where the Zoom capacity was not sufficient for us. And then for that, we used something like called Big Blue Button for an example, right? And most importantly, they were not isolated solutions, they were integrated. So they were integrated through the centralized systems. And also we had the automation of examination related processes, automation of undergraduate studies, automation of postgraduate research related things, and then even facilitating the research and ways other work through the virtualization and hosting. Because now people have to work from home, these facilities have to be there. So there was this gradual improvement, all of these from time to time, and then that helped us doing this. Now, of course, I'm sure many universities already have these things. It's only a matter of using them in the appropriate way, right? And also we had this policy development, which was very important. Because otherwise in the remote mode of operation, we can't cater for some of the issues that may come up. So the IT policies, acceptable use policies, managing the user counts, and social media, because that we need a lot in the educational, the learning process today. And then how the services, IT services arm should be restructured to cater for this new normal. And most importantly, the help desk, because the users will be facing a lot of issues. And then the only way that they may ask for the help is through a help desk. So we should have a kind of very efficient help desk. I'm not saying that our help desk is quite up to the level that we expect, but some form of help desk is there, because that importance was very much felt when this situation happened, right? And not only that, the people who are authorized to do things, who are responsible parties, may not be necessarily the technical people, but the people who are who have the authority. Now they had to engage in a lot of virtual meetings so that they can decide on what to be done and then communicate properly to the systems engineers and the technical people. So some of these meetings had all these parties together. So early, of course, always, different parties had their separate levels of meetings, but now all the things were brought together, and then all the people were together in decision making. And that is something that came up during this time. So in conclusion, I would like to say, one is the university education needs to be adaptive, whatever the circumstances may be. It can be some industry revolution that is happening, so that happened in the past, and the technology enhancements that are taking place around, and the widespread use of the internet and spreading of that to all the corners of a country, the IoT-driven environments that are coming up, right? Or else, even in the occurrence of a pandemic like this, right? Whatever the circumstances may be, the university needs to be adaptive, right? So now, in order to do that, unless the underlying facilitation that happens, unless that is smart, the processes, right, the university education will not be smart. So we need to focus on that, and then to have all these things facilitating this educational environment. Otherwise, the coping up with the challenges of the new normal will be far from the success. Now, many people think just the delivery of the contents is the education, but that is not the education. The mere content delivery, somebody may read it or may not read it, but the students or the learners need to get engaged. So we will see whether we have provided the proper university education when they go out of the university and when they go to the society. So because of that, an innovative learning environment that drives the learners towards achieving these objectives need to be created. So it refers not only to the use of technology, but also to redesigning the academic processes with an integration of the automation. The automation has to be brought in. So I'm not saying that we have done it in the level that we should do it, but we are somewhere there. So because of that, we are surviving today, and then we can face it. And then that's that was for our advantage, because even before the pandemic we could do it. But even today, the universities who have not started can start on it, and I hope that it will help. So with that, I would like to wrap up. So I would like to wish you a meaningful learning time amidst the pandemic, and take care.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shantha Fernando. Probably, actually, I don't know how many of you know, he has been a kind of person who was talking about e-learning at a time when other people were not very much appreciating e-learning, but during this pandemic situation, we have naturally moved into that area. Thank you, Shantha Fernando, for your presentation. I think you will be joining with us for the Q&A. Our next plenary speaker is Mr. Diyath Ariyarathne, General Manager, Pearson Lanka Private Limited. Mr. Diyath Ariyarathne is a General Manager at Pearson Lanka. He is a purpose-driven, value-based senior leader with engineering roots, carrying over 2 decades of experience in the global IT consulting and software product development industry. I think everyone knows about the Pearson. He obtained BSc Computer Science from the Mississippi State University in 1999. He has obtained license and certificates from Scrum Master and Scale Agile Framework Agilist. He is an Agile evangelist with over 18 years of experience in leading enterprise-grade Agile and traditional PMO teams, practices, delivery process, and rigor service client in US, UK, and EMEA. Presently, he bears overall accountability for driving the strategic directions of the world's leading learning company, Pearson, Sri Lanka, Technology Development Center, in alignment with the Pearson Global Vision. He leads the dynamic group of 800 plus software professionals that are engaged in product engineering, technology operations, and delivery while sponsoring and steering and engaging work culture that enables positive business outcome and is market competitive while being an advocate for Pearson global delivery and inclusion agenda. Recently, Diyath Ariyarathne has been appointed as a board member of Delivery Collective Sri Lanka, DCLK. Diyath Ariyarathne, it is over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Karunananda. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to start with a short video clip. If you can just confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, actually, we can.
Excellent. Thank you.
I can.
Poverty and inequality are universal. They undermine every society, everywhere. But poverty is not natural. It is man-made, so poverty is not inevitable. It's an area where the world has made huge progress in the past few decades. Just 30 years ago, there were 1.9 billion people living in extreme poverty, but that number has been transformed. In 2015, it fell to 734 million people. That's over 1 billion people lifted out of poverty.
1 billion people out of poverty is amazing. It was across the world we lifted people out of poverty. Across the world, more kids got into education. As across the world, maternal mortality was reduced. Across the world today, not many people will be left without access to a mobile phone, and what that has done to empower them to access to education, to a livelihood, is huge.
But still, almost 10% of the human race is living unbelievably harsh lives. This is largely determined by their circumstances at birth, and these high levels of inequality work against better opportunities for all. Opportunities that could change the world.
I want to tell you a story about 1999. I used to teach people how to write computer programs. And I had a very, plush office and everything. And just outside of these offices, there was this large, sprawling, urban slum full of children. So one day I tried an experiment. I made an opening in the boundary wall that separated my offices from the slum. And then I fixed a computer so that from the other side of the wall, you could see the computer and a touchpad. On the first day, we saw this 8-year-old boy teaching a 6-year-old girl how to surf. How on earth did he figure that out? How did he know what the computer was doing? 3 months after I had first put their computer in the wall, the children said they wanted a faster processor and a better mouse. I asked them, how on earth do you know these words? Where did you learn this from? And they said, well, you've left a machine here that speaks only in English, so we had no option but to learn the language. Easy, isn't it? I repeated the hole-in-the-wall experiment for 5 years across the length and breadth of India. In a village 300 miles away from Delhi, one girl is explaining to the other girl what a neuron is. They're just 12 years old. Wow. We have hope. We have an enormous potential of what children can achieve together if we let them.
Good afternoon, good morning, evening, depending on wherever you are joining from. I thank the Vice Chancellor, Major General Milinda Peris, Dean, Faculty of Computing, Dr. Asela Gunasekara, Major RMM Pradeep, and Mr. Ashenwa Niarachi, and the Faculty of Computing at KDU for inviting me to speak at this annual International Research Conference. I'm truly humbled to be a speaker here amongst such an eminent group of academic and industry professionals. I commend the Faculty of Computing for coming up with such a fitting theme this year: smart integration of technology to sustain and national development in the new normal. Along the same theme, I would like to share some of my thoughts around the opportunity we have as a country to use ICT to create a sustainable post-COVID Sri Lanka. Some of what I am going to talk about will have some overlap with what you just heard from Professor Tony and Dr. Shantha. Nevertheless, my perspectives are purely as an industry stakeholder that contribute to creating more opportunities in the information technology space in Sri Lanka. A fun fact about the photo you see here on the cover page: this was taken when Pearson donated a computer lab to a rural school just before the onset of COVID, about 20 minutes drive from Colombo city in Gampaha district. You can see the wonder of the boys, especially the one that's in the middle, who has never sat on a rotating computer chair, not touched a laptop in their lives. The time of this IT teacher that's here is shared amongst 2 schools in the area during a week. So this is reality in the outskirts of Colombo. Today, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, everyone understands the need to grow their economies and develop countries. But not everyone gives due attention to the negatives that unbalanced economic growth can have on our planet and people's well-being. It is time to change that by looking at the world in a different way, and sustainable development will help us do just that. Sustainable development is about the big picture. I'm sure this illustration is familiar to a lot of you. It is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs in natural, social, and economic resources. In 2015, 193 countries of the United Nations, including Sri Lanka, met and agreed to adopt 17 global sustainable development goals as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Enough is said about the environment these days, as climate change is the next biggest challenge humanity will face. I will focus on the opportunity we have with ICT that can help education and employment, which in turn can have a direct impact on economic and social aspects of sustainable development. World population today is around 7.8 billion. There are over 264 million children that don't go to school. 250 million children worldwide are in school but not learning. They might not be having the basic facilities or having learning disabilities. Lack of trained teachers, inadequate infrastructure and learning materials, makeshift classrooms and poor sanitation facilities make learning difficult for many children. 617 million children across the world don't have basic reading and mathematics skills. Another interesting fact is 65% of children aged 12 in year 2015 will do jobs that don't exist today. As you know, COVID-19 further deepened the inequalities in access to education. You have witnessed on media how our own sons and daughters climb trees and mountains to get access to their online class. On the other hand, if you look at some of the social and economic indicators specific to Sri Lanka listed here, whilst there is a clear and present danger in a straining economic environment, we still have some great opportunities as well. As a country, we have made progress in some of the issues concerning poverty over the past decade and a half. We have a high literacy rate at 92.5%. 99.1% of primary aged children are in school. Our service sector contribution to the GDP is around 60%. From our employment aged population, only 50% are in active labor force participation. I share these indicators with you because whilst global view looks grim, we do have a solid education foundation that most of our peer countries in the region don't have, that we can use to rebound despite the setbacks from the pandemic. Now let's look at some of the world trends that we see in education against the backdrop of the pandemic. Over the past 18 months, there was an accelerated adoption and rise of online and digital tools for schools and education. There's a massive demand to fill large number of high-skilled jobs in the market today. Government and private organizations have increased attention on employee training, upskilling and reskilling to meet evolving labor market needs with a growing need for accreditation and certification. Colleges and universities are demanded to offer shorter courses or lower cost options to help those who are unemployed. A growing global middle class, which is also true for Sri Lanka, and longer careers are also driving lifelong and informal learning, particularly for reskilling and upskilling. A trend that has accelerated over the past year. Few things are for certain. World will not return to pre-COVID status quo of education and will show permanent changes as a result of the crisis and adaptations to it. As Dr. Shantha rightly said, today learning can take place anywhere. Parents, students, and teachers seek profound changes in the way education operates in the future. Looking at the opportunity, what reforms should we focus on in Sri Lankan education system? As per the United Nations, COVID-19 has wiped out 20 years of education gains just in year 2020. Just think about that, 20 years of education gains just in a year. Inequality in education deepened with COVID, and learners demand equity now. Every child, every student in our country have the right to go to school and learn. regardless of who they are, where they live, or how much money their family has. We need more investments in use of technology for learning to stop falling behind further as a country. Sri Lanka's government education expenditure as a share of GDP is 2.1% and has been consistently lower than that of our regional income peers. We must address this. We need to update curriculums often and move away from outdated rote learning methods that have, I'm sorry to say, plagued our education system for many years. Especially in the remote or blended learning mode we have today, Sri Lankan students are fatigued as the curriculum content is not tailored towards online delivery. We need to fix that. It is encouraging to see that institutions such as KDU constantly reaching out to industry experts and adjusting their curriculum and course material relevant to today's market and modernizing the delivery of education. I recall Commodore Janaka Gunasila of KDU stating in a review board in the recent past that KDU graduates secure 100% employment almost immediately after they pass out. This is the outcome that Dr. Shantha also, I think, expected when someone graduates from our universities. This should continue to be the case in both state and private education institutions in Sri Lanka. We should look beyond the traditional 4-year degree and in addition, look at offering adult learning, shorter courses, soft skills training so that we can help the unemployed, which is a problem for our part of the world as well. There is a 14% dropout rate of students from O levels to A levels in Sri Lanka. And I believe this would help that population as well as the group that don't make it to the universities. We should promote more students and girls into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subject streams. In our part of the world, that is an untapped talent pool for tech jobs. Also today, 7 countries, including some of our peers in the region, have adopted coding as a subject to educate children technically and make their skills applicable for the upcoming future jobs. We all understand the value learning brings to people's lives in helping them progress and achieve their goals. We must ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Everyone should have the opportunity to learn because learning transforms lives and societies. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." The IT BPM industry provides a golden opportunity for accelerating economic growth in post-pandemic Sri Lanka. Accelerated digitalization and hybrid remote work models have disrupted the industry, creating great prospects for skilled tech talent to join a global workforce from our own country. IT BPM industry in Sri Lanka grew rapidly over the past 2 decades, and today, government of Sri Lanka identifies this sector as a thrust industry. It is a high value jobs industry with a small workforce. We can have a massive impact on the country's economy through a steady inflow of foreign revenue. Today, IT BPM industry generates over $1.5 billion of revenue and also a great forex earner for the country, IT BPM being the 4th largest exporter in the services sector. With over 680 ICT BPM companies, there are over 114 skilled professionals that contribute to 29% of the services exports of the country. Sri Lanka has fast emerged as a global destination of choice for IT BPM and knowledge solutions industry. Global brands are powered by Sri Lankan talent and getting recognized as an island of ingenuity for our high-end software engineering and technology services backed by ingenuity, quality, and world-class people practices. Today, as an example, the world's leading digital learning and media company, Pearson, that has over 22,000 employees worldwide, the company that I am part of, have made Sri Lanka their largest technology center for software product engineering and infrastructure management services, employing over 850 Sri Lankan technical talent. IT BPM industry require very few imported inputs, that thus making it a resilient industry. If you are in IT BPM, now you can technically work from anywhere. The industry is less vulnerable than other industries struggling in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and an ambiguous world. And also, more interestingly, IT BPM sector is less vulnerable even to government stupidity and outdated policies. While we have made huge strides and progress in digital and physical infrastructure development across the island, we are at great danger of falling behind our competitive edge as a location due to lack of quality and quantity of talent for the IT BPM sector coming out of our universities and higher education institutions. Higher education institutions must help the industry to scale up, producing more tech talent to meet the current growing demand. We must act now and take remedial action because we are falling behind among our peer countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan in global outsourcing indexes. Last but not least, I believe for us to rebound as a country and develop, we should also create a vision for our country, because my personal humble view is that one does not exist. One might ask, we have election manifestos that get dangled at us every couple of years with prospects of development that never get fulfilled. Sorry to disappoint, but typically those visions are just to merely get them elected. Even during the pandemic, impacting the entire human race, topics like business ethics, accumulation of wealth, values, equity are questioned. Development of a country should be holistic and integrated. And like Professor Tony said, whatever you do with technology should ultimately contribute to the vision you have for the country. It might work in a certain country, it might not. Remember, technology is only an enabler, and it is not the silver bullet for all problems development. Especially in our country's context, where over 60% of our population is strictly rural. There are sophisticated definitions on sustainable development that is all-encompassing, holistic, and integrated, but all these are modern expressions of deeper values we already had in our country in the past. Perhaps going back to the vision our great leaders had in the past for our nation has the answers for the kind of development we need today. And that is the vision our great kings and leaders had for this nation for thousands of years, which was Dhanyagara Dharmadipa, land of plenty, land of righteousness. I would like to close with an excerpt from a book written in 1999 by my father, who in fact was a close associate of the great General Sir John Kotalawala. And I quote, "There should be a spiritual, cultural, and socio-economic content in all development processes. Development should start from the grassroots, from the village up. People should fully participate in the planning for development and in the implementation of such plans. It should first strive to satisfy the basic needs of the people and not artificially create the wants that are a blind imitation from materialistic cultures." Unquote. Thank you and stay safe.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Diyath Ariyarathne. I think you have spoken on a topic, even though there are so many important points came out, I am really fascinated by your emphasis on the education side, because during this COVID pandemic, probably education is one of the most affected area in the country. So then I think at the Q&A session, we will have more time to discuss about this matter. So thank you, Diyath, again for your presentation. And we'll move on to the last speaker of the plenary session today. He is Mr. Dileep Jayatilaka, Director Research and Special Projects 99X, a blockchain architect actually with 17 plus years of working experience in the capacities of software engineer, team lead, and software architect. He has worked in Sri Lanka, Sweden, and Norway. He has led many teams to deliver high quality product to both the enterprise and the independent software vendors. Dileep is a developer with a strong background in native software development. He started his career with C and C++ development and later moved into coding with Objective-C. Currently, he leads the team that deliver web-based software solution to enterprise. He's also experienced in Microsoft.NET technology stack with many years of exposure into enterprise and standalone software architect. He possesses solid understanding on modern software design paradigms. Having led the mobile development team in 99X technology, Dileep has extensive experience as a mobile developer and an architect. Dileep has conducted numerous research related to software engineering, particularly in log analysis. He has several publications in various journals, conferences, and symposia. He has spoken in many international events. He is an enthusiastic public speaker and thought master. Currently, his main research interest is in blockchain. He is the architect for the 3 public blockchain-based products, including the supply chain traceability blockchain. Dileep is the co-founder of the blockchain-based traceability company, classified, which is with the headquarters in actually, please excuse me, because most of the people who know me actually think what happened to my specs, because during this pandemic time I have to change my glasses. So then without specs, reading is slightly better. That's why I am ready like this, but still I find some difficulties. Okay, then Mr. Dileep Jayatilaka, so over to you now.
Thanks, Professor Karunananda. Hope you can see my slide.
Yes, I can. Others can.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Today my topic is blockchain, which has been identified as a revolutionary technology even before the pandemic. But in the new normal, blockchain has extra significance as a way of building trust in communities, in business, and in international transactions, where we will not have access to the traditional means of building the trust in this new normal. I'm the co-founder of a blockchain-based supply chain traceability company, Tracified. So most of my presentation will be centered around our practical experience in using blockchain for tracking supply chains for the past 4 years. Okay, so let me start with the supply chain example. This is agri supply chain. As you can see, there are farmers and field workers in the supply chain producing things and recording things, and government authorities who try to make sure that the production happens in compliance to the regulations, and the business owners who coordinate everything and ultimately sell this product to the consumer, and ultimately the end consumer who consumes this, purchases and consumes this. But now if we take a picture like this, the economic intentions of these various parties are very much different from each other. They are misaligned, basically. The producers and field workers will want to get maximum payout for their produce, and the government authorities they just want to, they will be interested on flagging these businesses for the regulations, and the business owners will try to project a very beautiful picture about the product, sometimes pretty much deceptive, and the end consumer wants to consume a very high quality product for a very low price. So the economic intentions are very much different. So the blockchain's goal here is to ensure trustworthy exchange of information in a setup like this, where no one actually fully trusts each other. So this is blockchain's challenge: how to maintain information authenticity when different parties involved have misaligned economic interests. And to analyze a situation like this, we can look into a theory like game theory, which is a branch of mathematics. And this is a well-known theory in game theory, which is called prisoner's dilemma. Let's say cops take into custody two people in suspicion for a murder, let's say. Now the cops are really confident that at least one of them is guilty for this offense. Now the cops' strategy is this: put these prisoners into two prisons and cut all the communication channels between them, and give each of them an offer. The offer is this: if you defect your colleague, which means if you say that your colleague is guilty, then if your colleague also says you are guilty, then each of you end up having a sentence of 2 years in prison. Right? The numbers are given negative because the guys are trying to minimize it. Yeah, right? You should try to minimize your prison sentence. Now, if you defect and your colleague cooperates, which means your colleague says you are not guilty, then you will be freed straight away, and your colleague gets 3 years sentence. So that is this 0 and -3. And if you cooperate, and if your colleague also cooperate, each one end up getting a sentence of 1 year in prison. And if you cooperate and if your colleague defect, you get a sentence of 3 years, while your colleague will be freed straight away. And here, if you think from a rational perspective from one prisoner, if he cooperates, he gets either -1 or -3. That's his output. And if he defects, what is his expected output? 0 or -2. And what is better out of the two? It's obvious, right? 0 -2 is better than -1 -3. And each prisoner, of course, rationally picks this option, which is to defect and betray each other. And ultimately, they end up here. rational behavior with self-interest leads to this equilibrium. This is called Nash equilibrium in game theory. But it's not difficult to recognize that this is not the optimal position here. The optimal position is -1, where the prisoners cooperate and end up with only 1 year of sentence each. But they never end up there because of the rational behavior. So this is what happens when people have misaligning economic interests. They always end up in suboptimal positions. And this is the unfortunate predicament of most of our social relationships. So now, so because of that, it's very difficult to do transactions between people because of these misalignments. And this is one of the answers that human civilization has came up with, using money for transactions. Here you see A is selling a product to B and B pays to A with money. And you can see that the product has a value, definitely. It's obvious. But looking at money, it's just pieces of paper, right? And how to ensure that money has value. For that, you have centralized power, the centralized political power with government, which operates this setup using central banks as a centralized economic power, using jurisdiction and so on. But history has taught us the moment you centralize power, you end up with a lot of corruption, deception, and a lot of bad things. But the catch is, still money is an excellent mechanism. Money is one of the best inventions of human history, and it's an excellent way of exchanging value. So the question here is this: can we kick the bad guys out here and keep the good guy? The good guy is money, right? And this is the idea of Bitcoin, which brought the first blockchain. Here you have the money, but you don't have a government, you don't have a central bank. Instead, you run something what is called a crypto economic model according to a free market mechanism, which is decentralized without any centralized power, based on economic rewards and penalties. And this is how it happens. So what you see here is a blockchain. All the transactions. Transactions means I have a wallet, you have a wallet, and when I pay from my wallet to your wallet, the amount will be deducted from my wallet and the same amount will be added to your wallet. Simple as that. So that is called the wallet balance rule, which is the #1 rule in blockchain, which is extremely simple. And these transactions are grouped into what is called blocks. And then you have a sequence of such blocks. So that's how the blockchain, that term comes in. But the catch is this: there's no single government or single company or any kind of single authority to keep this record. This record is kept in a decentralized network, like what you see in the top. Right? Everyone keeps their own record and everyone keeps communicating with a lot of other people in the network. Each one of these dots is called a node, and each one participates in a activity called mining, which is basically you construct a block and then you do you conduct a calculation which only makes sense in the blockchain, and it doesn't have any sense or any value outside the blockchain. Effectively, what you do is you take the block content, add some random value to it, and get the hash of it, and then you repeat that operation until a certain bit pattern is yielded. And you will have to do that iteration maybe many trillions of times until you end up successfully mining a block. And while doing that, you are spending your resources, right? You are spending your hardware, you are spending your electricity. So you're basically making an economic commitment on the chain. So that is the number 2 rule, economic commitment rule. And then the moment you complete a block, you communicate that to the network and go to the next block and so on. So you ultimately end up with a chain like this. And when you work with a network like this, at any given point of time, you can have many such chains running in. And the number 3 rule is always the longest chain wins. So that's where you should get your truth. Right? So one of now here we can see 3 competing chains, and 2 out of them have the same length, but one of them will win soon. Now, the moment you learn about the existence of a longer chain, the best strategy is to switch all your mining resources into the longest chain, because otherwise you are just wasting your resources on a chain which is anyway losing. Now, when you mine a block, you get a reward for that, which comes in terms of the coin in this blockchain. If it is the Bitcoin blockchain, you get your reward in terms of coins, and that's how you encourage people to get engaged in this activity. So with this, ultimately, blockchain achieves a way of authentic transactions, enabling authentic transactions without the need for any centralized power. So this is a historic achievement. The potential of blockchain, the impact it can have in the world is usually compared with the potential, with the impact internet had on the world. So it has a lot of applications in many domains. Yeah, the in-chain value is economic commitment on a chain which is paid back later only through the blockchain. Now, in the previous slide, we saw many chains like this, and they are usually called soft forks. Soft forks usually happen due to network imperfections. The picture I have in my node may be different from the picture you have, because I have not received certain information by now because my network is slow or something like that. But a blockchain like this previous one will always converge into one chain, which is the longest chain. But there's another way where the chain can be changed. That is by changing the protocol. So if we go back to the previous slide, the protocol is basically this square you see in the top right. And if you change the protocol, you can change the chain as well. So this is not a soft fork, this is called a hard fork. And if the protocol change proposal is accepted by a majority, so this happens in a very democratic way. If you want to change the protocol, you need to bring in a proposal, and the majority of the community has to agree, which is a very difficult process. And that can go through several debates, campaigns, and so on. And if that happens, then everyone switches their mining power into this new protocol. And the old chain may or may not continue. I'll give you an example. This is from Ethereum, which is one of the most popular blockchains. The Ethereum blockchain was hacked in 2016, and something like $60 million were stolen due to a vulnerability in one of the decentralized apps, which is called DAO, which was placed on Ethereum. So if it was a small amount, then you could have gone, continued with that. But 60 million is something that you will have to consider significantly. So the Ethereum community discussed what to do to deal with this situation. And then the majority agreed to create a hard fork, change the protocol so that they bypass the block which contain the hacker's transaction, and take all the other transactions and create another block called block 4A and proceed from there. But a minority disagree to this because tampering, changing things, changing transactions is basically in opposed to the original blockchain ideology. So they continued with the original blockchain. Now today, these two are both are continuing as blockchains, and the hard fork is now Ethereum. It's the main Ethereum, but the other chain is also continuing under a new name called Ethereum Classic. Because Ethereum has the majority of the community support, the value of Ether is much higher than the value of Ether Classic. Yeah. And one interesting point is this. Now, let's say if you had a transaction here in block 2, which moved 100 Ether to your wallet, then now when you have two chains, suddenly you end up with 100 Ethereum and 100 Ethereum Classic. So you just got lucky. And another interesting fact which was revealed here is there's nothing called hacking a blockchain. Now these hackers, actually they were a group. They are working in daylight. They didn't get prosecuted or anything. Because remember, there's no jurisdiction or government in blockchain. The only rule is what is said in the code. So if the code has a vulnerability, that vulnerability is a part of the rule. So exploiting the vulnerability is not an offense. And the nature of truth in blockchain is like this. The truth in blockchain is like wine. It is more credible when it gets more older. And truth in blockchain is arranged like a story. So it is very easy to audit it. So auditing is one of the domains which is predicted to be disrupted in near future by blockchain. So the previous blockchain category is called chain-based consensus blockchains. There's another type of blockchains which is named semi-trusted blockchains. We in Tracify also we use one of the semi-trusted blockchain. No activity called mining here. For a blockchain of this kind to work, you have to have some kind of trust between the players, and you always have your floating truth only with respect to the final block. Until the final block, everything is cemented truth and it cannot be changed. So you don't have soft forks here. Smart contracts is basically logic executed on a blockchain. The original Bitcoin blockchain had some basic level of smart contracts enabled, but then Ethereum came and it made it possible to write any kind of logic that you would write in another program to be executed in the blockchain. So accordingly, Ethereum is called the world computer. Just like other entries in the blockchain, smart contracts also are immutable. They cannot be changed. So it's not like your code. In your typical code, when you figure out a bug, you can go ahead and fix it and release it to the code repository. But in a blockchain, the moment you commit a piece of code, that's it. You can never change it. And this is the blockchain ecosystem in a summary. Layer 1 is basically the truth building layer, which comprises the protocol, consensus mining, and those stuff I described. And there's a layer 0 as well, which is the invisible layer, where all those debates, discussions, and all those democratic mechanisms take place. And blockchain governance is a topic in its own right. And on top of layer 1, you have what is called dApp, so decentralized apps, which is basically applications running on top of blockchain. So Tracify also has a dApp on blockchain. And this is an example for a dApp we have developed, which is called Block Event, a very simple dApp. This is for selling event tickets on blockchain. So you have the public blockchain here, and we develop a dApp for that. You have the event participant and the event organizer. Event organizer creates a bunch of what is called assets in the blockchain, like coins, and then sets the ticket price. And the event participant makes the payment for one ticket, and the debt confirms to the blockchain that the payment is legitimate. So the blockchain releases one asset to the event participant. So in the day of the event, the participant walks into the event location and generates a QR code which represents that asset, and requests event entrance from the DEP, and the DEP confirms the event entrance request to the public blockchain, and the blockchain takes the asset back from the event participant and confirms the participant's ownership, that the ticket is a legitimate one. And the DEP authenticates the user, and it tells the event organizer that, okay, this is a participant who has a legit ticket, and let him in. So that's a pretty basic DEP, very simple kind of a DEP that you can have. But in Tracified, for supply chains, we have a much more complex blockchain due to this fact. Now, if we take go back to the previous transaction, now what the blockchain deals with is money, but money is plain value, right? If you take a 100 rupee note, even if that rupee note is worn out, the value of it is still 100 rupees. But the value of commodity, value of products is much more complex. So assuring complex value transfer in blockchain is a difficult thing, but still achievable. So if you take a supply chain, now what you see in the middle as gray boxes are the raw data in the supply chain, and they are hashed into the blockchain as black boxes like this. And what you have is information. So when you derive information out of raw data, you may have to do some slicing and dicing, which you achieve through smart contracts. And for dealing with the complexity of the supply chain data, instead of just one proof like in block event, Tracified comes up with a matrix of numerous kinds of different proofs regarding the supply chain like this. So that's how we deal with this complexity of information here. And ultimately, you end up with this. Now, before purchasing a product as an end consumer, you scan a QR code, and the blockchain tells you that the claims that the producer is giving you are credible. However, not every proof is a direct proof. Some proofs take application of complex logic on many transactions, which comes to this topic of long-running transactions, which is sort of a complex topic. So I will let me skip that part, but I can provide you, if you want to learn these long-running transactions, you can have a look at this blockchain, which is called Augur, which introduced this concept. And dealing with real-world facts in the blockchain, because blockchain is clueless about real-world facts. Blockchain only knows about digital records. So to record about real-world to a blockchain, you need actors called oracles, which is another concept in the blockchain. For example, in a supply chain, you can have an agri-field officer recording certain things in a farm and reporting that information back to the blockchain. Or a sensor, a device like a sensor, recording temperatures in a warehouse and reporting it to a blockchain. And privacy in the blockchain is also another emerging area, because one of the problems is when you go to the public blockchain, everything is there. Everyone can see everything. And there is a solution, pretty much a new solution named zero knowledge proofs, which enables you to guarantee things without exposing your information. So you can search for the technology in the internet. I don't have time to explain it right now. An example blockchain for that is Zero Cash or Zcash, where you have all the blocks in your blockchain like pretty much in another blockchain, but every block looks like a black box. The only thing it tells you is that all the transactions in this block are legitimate. That's it. You can't see any other information beyond that. Okay. Efficiency in blockchain is also another topic. There are a lot of solutions emerging, which have been emerging for the past couple of years. There are solutions like side chains, layer 2 solutions, and layer 1 solutions, and you can search for them. And these are sort of advanced topics with the blockchain. And in addition to the public blockchains, there are two other types of blockchains, which one is consortium blockchain, which you form by the cooperation of a number of organizations. Facebook's Diem is a example for that, earlier known as Libra. What Facebook has done here is they have partnered with a number of very reliable large companies, and these companies do the mining. So there's no public mining there. And a private blockchain is a blockchain which is governed by just one organization. And Hyperledger is a very good example for that. Okay, for learning, I can recommend these two books, Mastering Bitcoin and Mastering Ethereum by Andreas Antonopoulos. And a good blog to have a look is Vitalik Buterin's blog, who is the Ethereum founder. And if you guys are interested in the local discussions that are happening around blockchain, you can join this meetup, Colombo Blockchain Meetup, which we run. We usually have a meetup every quarter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dilip. So actually, when I was listening to your blockchain idea, anyway, I'll get back to you after, maybe at the end of the session, latter part of the session. So now it is time for us to have a short Q&A session. Of course, actually, our speakers have earned some time, so therefore we can use, organizers asked me to limit it for 5 minutes. Let's see how well we can behave. Anyway, just for participant recalling purpose, I will just mention the first speaker, Prof Yukun, was talking about multi-step head predictions. Then second speaker, Prof Tony, was talking about Techno-Socio-Psycho challenges. And third speaker, Dr. Shantha Fernando, was discussing about the smart university education. And Mr. Diyath Ariyarathne, he was talking about, again, actually, this education related matter and with some peripheral information anyway. And Dilip was basically talking about blockchain concept. So now floor is open for participants to raise their questions, and please present our speakers get ready for answering if the question is applicable to them.
Okay, I'm Dr. Ananda Adrisurya. This for the curiosity, I have a question for Mr. Dilip. How this blockchain cryptography financial service can be used in share market domain? Any idea?
In share market, yeah. Yes, yeah. In share market, can you think of a, business problem to address? For exchanges, there are already decentralized exchanges that are popping up. Because to address concerns like manipulation, because one of the concerns in share markets is market manipulation, right? And by decentralizing the exchange itself, you can make this the entire underlying infrastructure more reliable, plus the entire operation can be made more resilient for attacks, including manipulation kind of attacks. So that is one area, but I have not seen any particular application yet on share markets itself. But with, of course, fintech and exchanges, there have been a lot of applications coming up recently. Hope I answered your questions, but if you had a different idea.
Hello, good evening. I am Tushar Veeravardhana. My question is question to Dr. Shantha Fernando, or any other also can answer. Regarding online education, what are the evaluation and assessment method effectively that we can use for the university education when you talk about e-learning or online learning? So this is one aspect. Second question is that we saw that many students are not motivated at the learning process, and there are no social interactions. So therefore, collaboration, managerial and adaptive skills, how we can develop through the online learning systems. I think under the new normal conditions, we have to look for these, because there are many disciplines which need practical aspects, medicine, engineering, so many practical areas that we want to have hands-on experience. That also another issue. So could you please answer on these platforms? Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we all can hear.
Yes.
Yes, okay. In fact, you asked about the assessment. In fact, this is a bit of a large area when it comes to assessment in online learning. Now, we have to actually move away from the traditional way of assessing. There are various techniques that can be used. But one thing that we need to focus on assessment is that the outcomes of what they are doing. We refer it as outcome-based education, rather than having the normal examination kind of assessments. We have to assess their collaborative work, and then various other innovative ways of assessment. For an example, there can be peer assessments. There can be their engagement level assessments, and then how they do some kind of a project together collaboratively. So there can be a lot of different types of activities that they may do together. So we might have to manage different types of groups where they engage in a particular activity. And in fact, generally we have some kind of a misconception that when we have online education, that you can have a huge number of students and then we can automate all the assessments. Now, that is a misconception. Of course, there are certain types of assessments where you can automate. Kind of the multiple choice questions, and then short answers, and mapping questions, that type of thing. And you can automate. And once you have designed the question banks and the answers, etc., the system can do that. But the education means not only that. There are a lot of other activities. That's why we need mentoring and that kind of a activity in order to assess the work of the students. I'm not sure whether I answered. If I can get a...
Yes.
In fact, Dr. Shantha, I have the same question I had, but does the evaluation monitoring process is going to succeed when you go for your online evaluation?
Now, it is like this. Now, depending on the way we want to do the evaluation, and also depending on the types of tools we have, there are various different ways of evaluating and also even monitoring. For an example, okay, how do you conduct some kind of online examination? Now, for certain types of subjects or and certain types of examinations, yes, that is possible, and you may need even online monitoring or proctoring, and sometimes the video monitoring. But that will have the scalability issues. And in fact, there are certain other tools like where they can detect whether the particular student is copying or that type of tools are also there. Even in Moodle, for an example, there's a snapshotting mechanism which can be assessed later to see whether a student was behaving in a kind of a different way. But I would focus not on that type of monitoring and assessments. Rather, it should be a different way of designing the assessments. So we have to move away from this traditional way of exam type of assessments to a more collaborative kind of work, which will be assessed based on the outcomes that they produce.
Yeah, I think that is the important point. Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Shantha, I have a small clarification.
Yes.
That regarding this practical aspect and external ability, how we guarantee the quality assurance of those aspects, because of engineering student, medical student, we may have to go with blended learning mechanism or something like that. But my question is, such cases, theoretical matters, as you said, there are many ways to evaluate, many methods to evaluate. The practical aspect and also external ability of the students from the quality assurance perspectives.
In fact, now we might have to decentralize even that. Now, for an example, certain things you need to do practically. The simulation platforms will not be either appropriate or sufficient. Certain hands-on kind of work is necessary. Now, that's the nature of many engineering courses. Certain things, of course, can be done in a simulated way. Certain things, of course, you can ask the students to and then view through video or whatever during this pandemic. Or else, in some controlled environments, we might have to provide, some practical workshops or certain types of places where they can do that. Of course, I need to admit that not all things will be possible. Now, certain things, of course, will need to have a environment where the issues that we face due to the health concerns can be addressed. Now, there are, of course, as at now, we have a drawback. Yes, that is there. But then the question is this. Okay, now let's say when all these things are over, are we going to get back to the old traditional way of doing that? Or can we have a mix of things where the things are sort of, decentralized? And there is a way of practically trying those physical aspects. Now, let's say if you have to take some measurements and then measure the angles, and then you have to do some kind of a stress testing, let's say some kind of a the construction related subjects in a civil engineering course or something like that. So you have to practically do it. And even when it comes to medicine, for an example, you can't do everything in the simulations. You have to deal with the actual patients. So some form of an environment for that is necessary.
Okay, I think that discussion led to a very important point. As I noted it, when we are talking now assessment, actually we are thinking of conventional assessment method implementing on online systems. Probably, definitely, actually, in the future there will be new assessment methods which are more suitable for the online mode.
Yes.
Again, this delivery and even actually how we conduct this practical based modules.
Yes.
The online mode will also, people will one day discover how it can be done. These are the things we have to target, I think.
Yes, that is true. Because what I'm saying is even the physical activities, sometimes now our concept today is to bring everyone into one place and do that. Now that may not be possible if this situation continues. So then there should be a decentralized way of doing that. So that the COVID impacts are sort of, minimized.
Yeah, actually, I also want to add, because that is coupled to this one. I think we should not take this COVID as a kind of threat for the mankind, because when we have hardship, actually we come up with new things. For example, during the Second World War time, people were really losing a lot of metal. So the conductors, because they are used to all these copper, zinc, and so many other things have been used for this war purpose. As a result of that, actually people were basically facing a lot of scarcity of resources.
Yeah.
But because of this metal issue, people were doing a lot of research and other thing. And 1948, they found semiconductors. That's how we got the transistor. The transistor came because there was a scarcity of the metal at that time. So today, actually, we have all these digital computers, then electronics, computer science, AI, everything is because of the transistor. Actually, as I see, we might come up with some transistor-like new invention, maybe a new virus, even a bacteria, we don't know, even a molecule, which will change the direction of the mankind, because this corona came as a virus. Sometimes there can be a super class virus which can actually dominate the future of the world. I think we have to look at this COVID pandemic in that manner. This will make a kind of turning point or changeover for the rest of the 50 years or 100 years, whatever. And just a positive thinking only.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, can I add something to that mix? I started teaching online since 2009, before COVID. COVID is not something challenging from education point of view. When it comes to assessment, before I start the assessment protocol, online teaching is not going to replace face-to-face teaching. There is no model in the world can replace face-to-face teaching. You can argue whole day, every day, that's not going to change. However, when it comes to assessment, whether it's online or offline or face-to-face, as a teacher or as an instructor or a lecturer, you should ask yourself what exactly you are assessing. To know that your student know what you know, how many questions you need to ask. We still assess student 3 hours exam. 3 hours exam is a long time. Because world has changed, generation has changed, knowledge has really have a turn. You should think philosophically how many questions you want to ask from your student to know the student understand what you understand. Is it a 5 question or 50 question?
Yeah.
That is the research question.
So actually,
therefore, it is important to understand COVID is opportunity to reset ourselves, what we have to do different. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think
that is true. Now, even right now, in this new situation, many of these long exams are gone. Even at the University of Moratuwa, what we do is we have something called multi-part assessment, where we break the exams into several different parts, and then we change we completely change the way the students are assessed, and it's a kind of an ongoing process now.
Testing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to come out asking from Professor Tony, just how you interrelate this techno-psycho physio challenges with the student motivation and the education, lack of social interaction and lack of collaboration, lack of adaptability. How do you interrelate this education, physical aspect, physiology and psycho and technological matters together? How you look into this?
Okay, let me answer that question a little 2 seconds later, answering your first question you asked from Shantha, which you asking how to replace the practical part of engineering, medicine, etc. Still, that is possible. as either simulated environment or actual environment. At the actual environment, you can let the student do dissection, and you can watch the student how do it. You can teach the student. There was a model developed by British Columbia University how to do that. You can have a look at that. It's available online. Coming back to your question, those techno-socio-psycho issue is a human issue, a human factor. Now, if you want to motivate your student to come to online or offline or face-to-face classes, you need to give the student opportunity and the leadership. Let the learner to take the leadership of the learning, which is missing. If you let the learner to take the responsibility of the learning, they will understand the responsibility. This is why I said the involvement and the influence and the opportunity, which is we are still assessing like a traditional way. You must come to the class, you must sit the exam. That is changing now. The university has changed their teaching model. 99% of the Australian universities are changing their teaching model. You can have a look. Every university have their courses online. And of course, universities in Australia make money as their business model. However, the teaching model hasn't been much changed. So going back to your question in summary, the motivational factor is one, give the leadership to the learner, give them the value of the learning, ask themselves, how do you put this leadership and the learning of yours to the place where other people can recognize. That is how you ask the question. In the interview, for people who are choosing, they choose only 1 or 2 out of 10 or 100. How many questions they ask? Maximum 3 or 4 or 5. If you can't handle it, you missed out.
This lack of communication also in a large classrooms and at least a 50 student classroom, some students develop stress and anxiety. So such kind of issues, how do you address with online? Because this also remote learning system, and this can build up with the students without knowing due to lack of communication with the large classrooms even.
But even if it's communication or not, Tushara, the important part is you need to ask the learner the value of it. Think about the people who do not have eyes, who do not have ears, who do not have a highly capacity cognitive knowledge. They still learn, right? There was a YouTube, I noticed that there's a person who do not have both legs. That person is changing the car tires. Both legs are not exist, going through a wheelchair, changing the tires, changing the wheels, changing the oils is a mechanic. Think about that person.
Yeah, I agreed, but this is the majority which I am talking about. Because of communication, we cannot do online in such a way that as we expect in large. So student might develop this. That's what's focused on the mind. Thank you very much for your answer, and I am happy with that.
Yeah, in fact, if I add on to that, one strategy that we follow is, that's why I touched on this learner engagement. And then, of course, Professor Tony also discussed about giving leadership, so that the learners will take the leadership. So what we do normally is, rather than conducting the sessions in the traditional way, there's a lot of group activities happening while they are online. For example, even in Zoom itself, you have this what is called breakout sessions, where they get into groups of small numbers like 3, 4, 5, etc. And then they bring the collaborative knowledge to a common forum, and then those are shared. So the learning activity, that process has to completely change now.
Yeah.
And now even after this session, I will have another postgraduate course that I have to conduct. They will have a lot of group engagement, a lot of things that they will try out. And then the outcomes of the activities, what they explore, what they come up with, their designs, their creative work. In fact, that takes the students to much more higher level than simply delivering a lecture. So, so that's where the engagement comes in. even though you have large numbers of students, they are still working in very small groups, and then they get the sense of leadership, they get the value of the engagement, and they see the value of contribution that they can make, and therefore, because they are involved, then they learn a lot through that.
Well,
thank you very much.
My question goes to Professor Bao. Sir, am I audible to you?
Yeah. Yes. I'm available.
Yeah. In your presentation, you have explained a very interesting findings. Can you give us a small insight about some practical implications which can be generalized?
Well, basically, the prediction model falls into the category of time series model, time series forecasting. So in this regard, it can be generalized to many cases if the data size is kind of type of time series. Yeah. So it's I think framework is general, and you can use this to test many cases. Just as I mentioned that maybe 1 week or 2 weeks later, I will forward the link of the codes and the data and the manuscripts and to the colleagues in the university. And at that moment you can know more details, and you can try to apply it in your case. And if you face some troubles, don't hesitate to contact me and my team member.
Actually, coupled to that one, can I ask one question from Professor Bao? So that is actually now when you consider COVID pandemic like fast changing situation, how successful this multi-step ahead prediction? I thought multi-step ahead we can predict if the change is not very much frequent. Can you kindly?
Actually, just as I mentioned in my presentation, there are 3 modeling strategies you can use to achieve multiple step ahead prediction. So so generally speaking, the first one is easy to follow. We call this as a recursive one. This is to say you use a predict value as available value, and input it again into the model. So by doing like this, recursive one to achieve the multi-step ahead. And now the second is you just try to set up a function trying to map the relationship between the available value and the predicted, the time step. So and the third one is multi outputs. It highly depends on what kind of modeler you are using, because some modelers it can't do such kind of multi inputs and multi outputs modeling. So in this case, you have to carefully choose the right modeler. So for SVR, you must choose multiple SVR. And for neural network, because neural network inherently have such kind of multi-in and multi-output structure, so it's easy to do multi-step ahead prediction. So no worries. When you read my code, read my papers, definitely you will know everything of it.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, if you permit, I want to ask one question from Dilip.
Yes, please, one question, okay? Because now
Dilip, regarding this blockchain, the lack of regulations currently creates a risky environment. And also, even though you have smart contracts, they are not legally recognized, for my understanding. So how do you solve this issue? This is one thing that I want to check with you. On the other hand, in your talk, you told about immutable transactions. Of course, people want to change kind of transaction. They want to do something. Reversibility should be possible with some limitations. If that is not present, that also some kind of issues. And inability to cancel payment. This is also another issue. How do you address this point?
Right. The first one is about regulation. Regulation or applying any kind of external rule is, if we look at from a theoretical perspective, is the opposite of blockchain ideology. So the blockchain ideology is to make some useful thing happen as a result of interactions in a decentralized way without centralized control. But still, the question is valid. Of course, the regulation is already happening in the cryptocurrency level. You may already know that almost all of the major nations have some policy, some regulation on cryptocurrency. And if we look back, 2017 especially, there was a craze on what is called ICO, the initial coin offerings, and hundreds of blockchains just popped up. You just come up with a white paper, some concept, and then go for funding, millions of dollars, and a lot of fraud took place. And then a lot of countries came up with these regulations, and ICOs are almost banned in a lot of countries right now. So regulations can be applied on cryptocurrency level, and actually the blockchain itself, what it cares about is reliable information exchange than the currencies. So maybe the blockchain doesn't need the level of regulation that a cryptocurrency requires. But having said that, in your question, you also mentioned about something related to
immutability.
Yes, yeah, immutability was the second one, but in the first part,
smart contract.
Yeah, binding smart contract into some real world conventions or rules or laws, but that is already happening with this consortium and private blockchains. There are, by law, you can link a blockchain smart contract into a law or some convention. If you can have a look at applications of what is called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. There are a lot of applications around that where blockchain smart contracts and the real world rules work together. The second one is about the immutability. Yes, that is a problem that we also came across in Tracified as well, because we get a lot of information from various people in a blockchain, but it's very much possible that, let's say, when a farmer is entering certain information about his farm, he makes a mistake. It's not an intentional mistake, it's a genuine error. So there should be a on one side, we are trying to tackle intentional misinformation, but on the other hand, you have to leave some room for genuine errors as well, to go back and correct them. And in Tracified, we also came up with a mechanism to enable a business admin to review a change, and if it is actually legitimate, then go back and change it through a versioning mechanism. So that is also in practice already. So this immutability is not rule written in stone. In today's practical blockchains, people have already found workarounds.
Okay, then.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I think I find it very difficult to stop the discussion because there are a lot of enthusiasm built up by the participants and the speakers. So then I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to all the speakers, not only for their presentations, but also answers given to the question raised by the audience. And participants and the person especially who asked questions, I really appreciate your enthusiasm shown. And finally, I thank to all the organizing committee members of this 14th KDU IRC. Wish you all the best. Thanks a lot again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And now we have come to the end of the computing plenary session. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend our gratitude to Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda for chairing the computing plenary session and the speakers who enrich our event with their valuable speeches. Also, we highly appreciate the participants who have joined online to this session. Due to the prevailing COVID pandemic situation in the country, this conference is conducted online. Therefore, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, a token of appreciation to the session chair, Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda, and to all the speakers will be delivered in due course.
Recording in progress.
Ladies and gentlemen, now let me invite Dean Faculty of Computing, Dr. Aswela Gunasekara, to deliver a vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. It is my pleasure to have an opportunity to extend our gratitude for the eminent researchers who joined with us today for our plenary session. First of all, I would like to thank Senior Professor Asoka Karunananda for accepting our invitation and chairing the plenary session today. Also, I would like to give my heartfelt gratitude to the speakers of the day, Professor Yukun Bao, Professor Tony Sahama, Dr. Shantha Fernando, Mr. Diyath Ariyarathne, and Mr. Dileepa Jayatilaka. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and the valued time you have dedicated to glamour our session with new knowledge, with a lot of insights. We are honored to have all of you here with us today. And also, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our Vice Chancellor, Rector Southern Campus, and Deputy Vice Chancellors for their continuous guidance given throughout. Nevertheless, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Mr. Pathum, Head of Department of IT, Dr. Nirosha, Major Pradeep, Mr. Indika, Mr. Ashen, Mr. Shashika, and their teams for organizing this session to fit with new normal and very well done. Also, I would like to thank the rapporteur, computer, and other technical teams, including photography and sounds, for their utmost support given to run this session perfect. Also, I would like to thank the two coordinators of my faculty, Ms. Induni, Dr. Chandima, and my whole FOC team for the overall coordination and organizing the computing sessions. Last but not least, I would like to thank the whole audience who joined with us online for your valued participation. With that, I conclude my thanking remarks. Stay safe and have a pleasant evening.